it's markets that don't make sense. We've got a lot of markets that aren't making sense in both the SENSE way, but also the CENTS way for Frank. Not a lot of sense coming my way, given all the action that we've seen in Forex and interest rates. And I want to show Jermal some examples of some extremes, some markets that are outliers, that are outside of the normal, that aren't making sense, so to speak, show what we tend to do, but then also give people a little bit of sense of, if the market continues to not make sense, what can I do if I get on the other side of an outlier, something like in the euro today, a huge outlier move, something that we haven't seen in the last 2 decades. If it continues in that outlier fashion, what can I do as opposed to just getting on the other side of it and hoping for the best? But we just talked about this a little bit. The closest that we've been to parity between the euro and USD since 2002, you and I both are talking about selling that dollar, buying that euro. And this is, I mean, when did you start trading? Because have you traded in a euro worth less than $1 environment, which is to say prior to 2002?
No, I started trading in 2006. So you can see where that is on the map here. And so I think the first time I do remember that 2015, that yuan valuation era and that 2016 time period. I do remember that. But in my mind, for whatever reason, the euro is always trading like 1.2 or something. I don't know what it is. Like it just kind of like that. That's what I think of. I don't know.
And I think that's a fair mean. Like people who talk about mean reversion in volatility, it's like, oh, VIX at 20%. Yeah. That's about the average price. Crude oil, and we're seeing a lot of that mean reversion in crude oil here today. Oh, about $70 a barrel the last 10, 20 years. The last 10, 20 years, yeah, I think $1.25, a pretty good average price. We've seen these levels before, though, to your point, in Brexit. And all of that news coming out and what's that going to look like for the Eurozone and everything. And they bounced off these levels, but now push is coming to shove. And there are odds of this market getting to parity for the first time in 20 years by the end of this year. Actually, I put these numbers together last week, but now updated for today's move, a 30% chance of parity by the end of 2023. Do you think that is overrated, fair value, or underrated? 30%, almost a third of a shot of getting down to parity by the end of the year, Jermal.
No, I think that's fair, actually. How's that calculated? Is that calculated in a certain way? Or?
Just option delta in the euro put market.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's somewhat fair, honestly. We could certainly see it just on a one touch, right? Like that's what we're talking, right? I mean, that could happen. 30%.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you that 30% is feeling pretty fair, given that we're at $1.03 right now. So to get down, I mean, 3 cents is 300 points in that euro market, which is a lot. That said, we're down 200 points just today. And to get there by the end of the year, that's given this market about 5 months of leash to get down to that parity value. That being said, though those odds may be high, and though we might think 30% is pretty fair value, I'm probably selling those odds. And if we do say it is December and we are below $1 in that euro market, I can roll those things out and just lean on the historical data that will get back to this mean, this average price. That's how we trade so many different markets, and Forex has been one of those that's good for it as well. Another market that's not making sense, and actually right now just got back to an inversion here, is the TUT spread, my friend. This might have flown under the radar. Rates are down today, but the 10-year rate's actually getting hammered the worst out of anything. Another one that is out of whack, and this is a similar outlier, Jermal, in that we only see this the last couple of decades, less than 10% of the time. Is this another one that you feel is kind of fair for everything going on, but would you be on the other side of this inversion?
Yeah, I'm starting to get interested here on the other side of the inversion. I mean, anytime, you got to say it like this. Have you seen Top Gun at all? Have you ever seen any one of them? You're not a movies person.
I'm not, but I have seen they go inverted.
Okay, exactly. And so we saw this earlier this year. We saw a bounce back. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going to see it in the same fashion again, but it is worth a trade, I think.
Absolutely. And so this is what we do with markets that don't make sense. We're not a black swan fund, right? Like it's not like, oh, we're betting for that one outlier that occurs every 20 years. No, when we see those outliers that occur, we like to get on the other side of them, trade, options mean reversion, or, Forex mean reversion, or yield curve mean reversion, because 9.5 times out of 10, maybe even more, that market does revert to normal, and we're going to be on that side of things. Now, that being said, we were at extremes in US dollar. We were at that inversion just a couple of weeks ago, and a little bit of a head fake. Hopefully people took some profits and are able to get back on. But if that market continues to not make sense and continues in that outlier fashion, Jermal, if you're trading short term, if you're trying to put on a day trade or, a 48-hour trade, you have to be ready to manage losses. Even you can't get stubborn and say, oh, well, this is now the top. You have to be willing to buy that back. In the long term, a little bit easier, but make sure that you've got that optionality going. You're, rolling up those puts if the market is moving higher against you. You're rolling out in time because you can get on the other side of these markets that don't make sense, Jamal, but you have to be ready if they continue to not make sense a little bit longer before coming back to normal, right?
You have to be ready to take evasive action in those situations because you don't want to get too stubborn or emotional about a trade that's not going your way.
Absolutely right. Couldn't say it better myself, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us here on one of the wildest days that we've seen all year for sure. If you're only watching stocks, you're missing a lot of the action. So hopefully you're getting into Forex, getting into interest rates and everything else in a small and safe fashion. And hopefully you're getting into engineering the trade and splashing into futures, a bunch of the other parts of the network where Jamal features on. Make sure you're following him on Twitter as well. Always great trading content and also great family content. I think it was your daughter was riding like an ATV or something this weekend.
Yeah. That's where we were, Frank, out in the country, man.
Very, very cool stuff. Thanks as always, my friend, for joining us. Thanks everybody for watching Small Stakes. We'll be back tomorrow. Stay tuned. Splash into Futures coming up next. Peace.